They are Hebrew Israelites. And that's not a religion. That's not a cult. It's strictly a nationality bloodline. That's not a cult. It's strictly a nationality bloodline of people. And it's that simple. They're a bloodline, and you cannot convert into being an Israelite. You can't, change to be an Israelite. You are what your father was, what your forefathers are.
Whitewashing is in everything. The media, education, history is whitewashed and biased. Education is whitewashed and biased.
The true Jews, according to the Bible, you can check it in the Bible, you can read Job 30:30 and some other places. They have never been white. They have been people of color. And they have not stopped in Ethiopia. They were in Ethiopia, Sudan, and they have settled in West Africa. From West Africa, they have been taken as slaves to America. Brothers and sisters, blacks of America, it's you. You are the true Hebrews. You are the true Hebrews from the Bible. America gonna do everything, gonna invest as much money as it has, gonna fight as much wars as they can, gonna invite as much weapons as they can just to hide this away from you. Gonna take Israel, gonna bring white people here and to tell you these are the Jews, gonna kill you, gonna kill Arabs, gonna mistreat white people like this guy, just to tell you this lie that you are nobody and we are the Jews with all the history and so on. It has been deleted, your history. You don't know who you are. Don't forget about it. This is why America has been taking your history away, never to find out that it's all about you. I'm telling you this, please. I don't ask you to come to Israel and to start a revolution. I'm just asking you to start thinking this way, to believe me a little bit, because I'm living in Israel and I'm part of this injustice. I really believe that people like me and you, we can bring the justice back.
From my perspective, it is absolutely true, and it is provable. That's the thing, not only by history and looking in the scriptures, but by DNA as well. There are articles on it. In future, I will give reference to them. But the true Hebrews, the Hebrew Israelites, also known as the Israelites, also known as the Jews. Who are they? The lost 12 tribes of Israel. Modern day, if you want to be really technically accurate, they're dark-skinned people. They're black people. The true Jews of the Bible are black people. They're dark-skinned people. And I'm going to be doing this video to prove that. I'll kind of get into a little info about it. What you can almost call a movement or idea re-emerged fairly recently, about 100 years relatively, and all over the world, but especially pertaining to America and the US, there are groups of Negroes and Latinos and Native Americans. There is a doctrine that goes around, and it is that the Negroes, the Latinos, and the Native Americans are part of the 12 tribes of Israel. This is true, they are.
First of all, they used nigger first, but it was a derivative of the Negro word. They knew who you were, and they figured out that if you keep saying Negro, they'll trace it. There's a way to trace who Negroes are. Negroes are a people. It's not just a byword or something white people may came up with or something that we just call ourselves. It is not a bad word. It's not a disrespectful word. I thought it was until I researched it and found out that it is not. Zondervan Bible Dictionary. The definition of Ham. Who is Ham? Ham is the third son of Noah, where the African races come from, right? Who they said we come from. Did they not tell us we came from Ham? That's what I heard. Well, Zondervan, for some reason, is saying Ham, perhaps, well, I can't see it over, but is the eldest son, the son of Noah, born probably about, I can't say it, before the flood, and one of the eight people who lived through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark race, the father, say father, of the dark races, not the Negroes. All Africans descended from Ham. All Africans. Put it back up there. Ethiopians, Libyans, Egyptians, Canaanites. They all descended from Ham. Now, if you are African American, you got to be one of them. But somebody's telling you their daddy ain't your daddy. Why did they single out the Negro? And when you came to this country, that's what they was calling you. Somebody knew you wasn't African. So we have proof saying you're not an African. Said the because Africans are now the sons of Ham was Cush, Mizraim, Put. Right? Sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put. Those are his three sons. So we know that's Egypt and Ethiopia and Ethiopia and Libya. There you go. Those were the three people groups that came from Ham. Where the black races that scholars told us all these years, that's where black people came from. Every black person came from Ham. But now we're finding out, wait a minute, there's this anomaly people called Negroes that you overlooked that because you think Negroes is just a word they was calling us when we came here. But you don't know Negroes was defining you. That's why they changed the name from Negro to black. Why did they change? Then they changed it again to really screw you up and call you African American. Because now you think you're from Africa. That's what we want you to think. We don't mind you think you're from Africa because you ain't gonna never know where you from, that's just like saying you a Scandinavian. You wouldn't matter. But if we leave the Negro title on you and y'all get a hold to these certain maps, you're gonna know where you're from. Then you're gonna trace who you are, and then you're gonna see who we are. Come on. I'm gonna show you a 1771 map of Africa. It was not called Africa. Africa came from a white Jew named Africanus. These maps have been erased from history because this is how they hid who you are, who we are, and they cut our history off. Literally wiped it. I'm gonna show you. They literally did it. Put me up there. Now this is the lower part, the west part of Africa, the horn, around the horn. Now right here, where Mali, Ghana, Nigeria is in the middle. If you can see, that's called Negro land. That ain't just no byword. Negro land's a place. And in Negro land are the 12 tribes today. But if you see the word Guinea, y'all see that? Now they divided this up through the Dutch, the British, and Denmark, Holland, and England divided it up, and you see the different colors showing the borders of their lands. Now, where you see Guinea at, you see, I'll get up there and show you. And of course, this is modern day Nigeria. It'd be like Cameroon, Nigeria, Benin, all that, Ghana, all right here, Sierra Leone over here. Now, this is called the Grain Coast, right? Now it's called the Grain Coast. I wonder why they called it the Grain Coast. Because that's where they took grain from. The Gold Coast, because that's where they took the gold from. The Slave Coast, Because that's where they took the slaves from.
Welcome back, family, and this is part 2 of our lineage. And remember, we have to go through lineage. It's very important because in Genesis, God goes through lineage of Abraham in order to find out who's his chosen people. Through our lineage, we find the earliest member is a Plato Williams. And out of Plato Williams, we have Emmaus and Julius. Through the two of them, we are able to decipher our history. It is there we find an oral traditions, our stories handed down through generations. It is here that we find Royal Johnson, who's the grandson of Julius, who's told us that our family derives from Madagascar. Okay, so that's a newfound fact. Madagascar, we always thought that most African Americans were from the west coast of Africa. However, in fact, our family is derived from Madagascar. So in the last video, if you didn't catch it, we go through and discover and find out how the Hebrew people's migration pattern both went east and west. We also find out about our DNA, if this can be proven through our DNA. Well, family, it can. If you watched our last video, we went over the Southern Bantu peoples. And that just means our Cameroon, Congo, and Southern Bantu peoples, or South African, as well as Nigerian. The word Bantu is simply a colonist word or a Zulu word for the word people, a group of people.
We have
What people are
descendants
they?
of the transatlantic slave trade identifying with being of the children of Israel. Now, can you tell me, in this transatlantic slave trade, was there any Igbo blood?
31% of the African American population is believed to be of Igbo ancestry, because Igbo land suffered more from the slave trade than any other part of Africa. And the Igbos were dumped in places that are presently the United States of America more than in other parts of the Americas. So definitely, a lot of the group identified as African Americans today have Igbo ancestry.
That's very fascinating. I mean, we know that Israel isn't, like we mentioned before, pure blood only. It doesn't have to be you are a direct descendant of the house of Israel to be part of the house of Israel, because the Torah is very clear that people can join the house of Israel. But if the 31% of the slave trade you're saying was made up of Igbo, now today, with all the marrying, everyone marrying each other, we could assume there's Igbo blood scattered throughout the whole African American diaspora. Is that correct?
We can assume that because with the intermarriage, they were mixed together. It will be very, very difficult to find an African American that does not have Igbo blood today, because the group intermarried.
And now at the time that the Igbo went into exile, I'm trying to put this into perspective of when this happened so we understand what culture they might have retained and what happened in Israel after they left. So this was around the Babylonian exile, the Igbo were?
Yes. My studies, my probing indicates that we were the group that moved into Egypt, while you were the group that moved into Babylon. We are taken into Babylon.
Right. Historically, this was at the destruction of the first temple before the second temple was built.
Absolutely.
And the Jews, quote unquote, the Judeans, were exiled into Babylon, but not 100% of them went into Babylon. We even know some were left in the land, but a lot of them were exiled south into Africa as well.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to show you, I'm trying to give you definitive understanding how we got here. Because that's really one of the major problems is, okay, well, if we are those people, how do we get from Africa to here? Well, that's what I want to show you, because that's where they're trying to knock us with and trying to come and say it can't be, because how did we get? Well, I'm going to prove to you without a doubt the route, everything, how we got from where we got. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Now, I've already proven this by DNA. I gave y'all the DNA test. You do your own test. I tell you, if you are Hebrew, your DNA is going to take you right back to Nigeria or Benin, right? And I'm going to show you why that's where it's going to show that you're from. All African Americans are going to, and Caribbean, wherever you are, if you are black in this hemisphere, your DNA is going to take you back to Nigeria, because there was a certain place, I told y'all before, they did not take the slaves all over Africa, picking all over Africa. So instead of embracing Christ, they crucified him, which became why Rome got to come in and destroy Jerusalem and kill a lot of them and run them out of Jerusalem. And that's when the journey to slavery began. That's when the curses of Deuteronomy began to kick in on their life. And then we're going to find out that we are living in that modern day. Now, you got that?
Torah says that a large part of them trying to evade Babylon, which came to exact retribution for the killing of Gedaliah, moved into Egypt.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from Egypt, you can trace your travels all the way throughout Africa, where you ended up in Nigeria how many years ago?
We have been in Nigeria more than 1,000 years, but I think we moved around, lived around North Africa and other parts of West Africa for at least 1,000 years, and the roots are very, very clear, because life continued in the roots until even modern times.
So here's where I'm going with this. So you left Israel at the time of the Babylonian exile. You were in Africa. So by the time that the Judeans returned to Israel with the Second Temple with Ezra and Nehemiah, and came back from, not all of them came back, but a large percentage did, they settled the land and they started to codify the law and write down laws of Israel. And eventually, a few hundred years later, they redacted the laws and they made an oral law, and this became what the Jewish law is today. But by the time that was all happening, you were already deep in Africa, lost.
Yeah, but interestingly, to show you that those laws belong to all of Israel, we see those laws that the people that went to Babylon codified in Omenana.
Most likely, maybe that they were the original Israelites, and maybe that the Jewish people today, who are white Caucasian people, came in a little bit later on. We know that some of the greatest sages of the transmission of the Torah were converts from Rome. You have a man named Onkelos who wrote a commentary on the Torah, unprecedented, that we still learn today. He was a convert. Some of the largest pillars on the transmission today were Roman converts. So here we are, we're Caucasian Jewish people, and now you have people in Africa saying that they're the real people of Israel. It can't be ruled out at all. We know they were sold into slavery. We know now that they're fulfilling prophecies by saying they're coming back.
The Jewish-Roman War. Now, this is where the last time the true Hebrews were in Jerusalem, in 70 AD. This is the last time the real Hebrews, say real Hebrews, were in Jerusalem. Put it on me, Tim. Now, the Hebrews that are there now are converts. They come from Khazaria in the Caucasus Mountains, White Mountains, in the southern hemisphere of Russia. They had a king in 700, was it AD, 70 AD, called King Bulan. He decided that they had Christians coming against his kingdom on one side. He had Muslims coming on the other side. He didn't want to be Muslim because they was called the serpent people, very wicked people. So he knew he couldn't want to be Muslim because Muslims was too strict, and he didn't want to be Christians because Christians are real. So he said, we'll be Jews. He sent to Jerusalem to get rabbis, Babylonian Talmudic rabbis that came and taught them Judaism, and they converted the whole country to Judaism and called themselves Jews. These are white folks that called themselves Jews. They migrated from the Caucasus Mountains down into all of Europe, and then during the Second World War, the First World War, they had migrated all throughout Europe. Then in the Second World War, they had gotten into Germany and Poland and all that. That's when Hitler decided he's gonna get rid of these people, and the whole goal was they was trying to find a homeland. Say a homeland. Well, by them calling themselves Jews, of course they felt they had the right to Jerusalem. But they were not the real Jews, but the Palestinians was living in Jerusalem at the time, which they not the true people supposed to be there either, but they more Semitic than these white so-called Jews. You got what I'm saying? They came into Israel in 1948 with the help of the United Nations by Britain signing a Balfour Declaration to give Israel to the Palestinians. Just gave it to them. To give it to these white Jews without, how can you give somebody, that's the same thing they did in America. We just gonna take the Indian land. That's what they did to the Palestinians. So now you don't see that. All you see on the news is these Palestinians throwing rocks and launching bombs and doing suicide, but you don't know why they doing it. Well, somebody moved in their land, decided they're gonna take over their land with no true rights to that land. These are white people living in the hottest place in the world. They have no real heritage in the land, but the world goes along with it because they are your bankers.
Obviously what your books speak about a little bit.
Yeah.
I think on the title of your book you said the largest Jewish diaspora.
The Igbos and Israel, an intercultural study of the largest Jewish diaspora.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
But the Bible says he's coming back for a people. That's the reason why Jesus, remember when the woman came, that the Syrophoenician woman whose daughter was sick, and Jesus said, listen, I haven't come but to the lost sheep of the tribe of Israel. He was saying, listen, who I'm coming for. That don't mean y'all can't get in on it, Gentiles, but who I'm really sent to. Now, you got to understand, if he's coming for the lost sheep, then the people over there ain't lost. The people in Jerusalem ain't lost. They say they know who they are. Lost means I don't know who I am.
Nigeria, the 7th most populated country in the world. And every day within this dizzying frenzy, thousands stop what they're doing for Mincha, the traditional Jewish afternoon prayer. This community of Nigerian Jews belongs to the country's third ethnic group, the Igbo. They claim to be descendants of a lost tribe of Israel, and today observe religious practices very similar to rabbinical Judaism. Although it's not always easy, one dream unites them all: to one day set foot in the Promised Land. Over a dozen rabbis, researchers, and journalists have come here to meet Nigeria's Jews to discover and evaluate their religious practices, but also to bring them books and knowledge.
As we continue to quest about our roots, some Israelis start to come to Nigeria also to investigate this. And while they come, some of them come with talitot, and some of them come with sudorim. And from this, we started to learn to wear the kippot, to dress properly, to wash our hands.
Being Jewish in Nigeria is very, very difficult, very, very hard, because every day you are persecuted, every day you are faced with 10 opposition. They don't want you even to mention the word Jewish. But here, we have this difficulty. Still, we are progressing, we're making an effort to serve Hashem, even in these difficult times.
Before I introduce Modric Mayasera, I think I need to introduce Lemba Jews. Many, in fact, based on my last conversations, most of you have heard about that there's a African tribe with the Cohen gene.
The Cohen gene or the Aaron gene means that you have a male descendant in your family that is directly descended from Aaron, which is the brother of Moses.
And it's true. The men of the Lemba tribe in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique do in fact have the Cohen modal haplotype.
Look at the area, family. This gene can also be found in Madagascar, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, South Africa, the Cohen gene, directly from where they got slaves. As you can see, they didn't get slaves from all over Africa, only specific
In
parts.
the same proportion as Jews around the world. For those of you not familiar with the Cohen modal haplotype, geneticists have found a certain mark on the Y chromosome called the haplotype that is found in approximately 50% of the self-identified Kohanim, both Ashkenazi and Mizrahim, about 15% in the LEVIim, and 2 to 6% in the rest of the Jews.
Most Ashkenazi Jews only have a very tiny percent of the population that has this chromosome, this extra Y chromosome, or the Aaron gene. Okay. However, Negroes or the Hebrews from this area have more than 50%.
Non-Jewish populations, the haplotype is non-existent or less than 1%. Among the 12 Lemba clans, the Buba clan has more than 53%. The rest of the Lemba having somewhere between 2 and 9%. While this genetic link is very important, it is only part of the story. And to me, the more important part is the fact that this is a group of practicing Jews. In spite of being isolated in tribal Africa, in spite of being missionized by innumerable Christian churches, schools, and sects, and then by Muslims and now by Jews for Jesus, the Lemba keep practicing Judaism. Their traditional story is that they lost their book. So all their practices and history, by necessity, are passed down orally. Is that for at least 1,000 years, and possibly much longer, they have held to Jewish halacha and did it orally. So why haven't we Jews heard about the Lemba? Because the Lemba have been hiding out.
And you say, why is this important? Because to know the Messiah, you're going to have to know who he's coming for. See, the colonial powers had to erase who God was and then cause us to believe that nobody is in particularly special. But even Paul says in the book of Romans, God has not cast away his people. saying that God is, it's all Israel shall be saved. Now the problem is, I don't have time to go there, it's in Revelation 2, when the Bible says there's these false people who are calling themselves Jews but are not. But they are the synagogue of Satan. And we know they are the Zionists, the Rothschilds, them Jews over in Israel. They false. They not real Jews. They from Khazaria. I done said it over and over again. The point is they're living in, what happened was those are the people that have scrambled up all the history so nobody knows who they are, and they kept us from knowing who we are. Now they couldn't kill us because the Most High's hand was still on us. But what they did do was erase us. They erased you. That's why you don't know Negro land. If they didn't erase you, would know Negro land is a place. You don't know that because they erased it. Why? Because they didn't want you to know you was from somewhere. Why? Because if you trace where you from, you're going to trace from Africa, and you're going to see the trek back to Jerusalem, and then you're going to find out who you are, and it's going to point to who they are. And like Hitler said, they are bastards. They are imposters. And the reason why they got all that wealth and money and all that is because the world thinks they are those people. They think they God's chosen people. And y'all heard what I'm saying.
More recently, during the last 100 years, information has surfaced about the activity of Jewish slave owners during the transatlantic slave trade. Many Ashkenazi Jews had a prominent role in the slavery of Hebrew blacks. In the book, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, we find that Ashkenazi Jews had a prominent role in the slave trade. Because the Portuguese had all the ships, they were the middlemen that transported Africans to the New World.
Keeping their traditions, but doing so secretly. Stuck in Africa, they lost contact with us. Even today, the Lemba are carefully guarding their secrets, some of which could enlighten the rest of Judaism.
Remember when you learned about the Crusades, the Holy Wars, where men were in search of God's objects?
More beautiful than I ever imagined. Certainly is the cup of the King of Kings. Eternal life.
Again, this document, stemming from 1789 to 1865, pulls together evidence of Jews and Negroes in slavery in the Old South. It outlines the prominence of Jews within the slavery movement, especially in the South and the West Indian colonies. They were major slave owners. Jewish activity in the slave trade can be likened to that of their ownership of more than 90% of the media company today. This includes most network companies, newspaper companies, as well as media on the internet. It also includes most record companies. Remember that most of your artists say that they have a 360 deal, and the 360 deal is like modern day slavery, where they own most of the rights to everything that you do. Even if you get out of the industry, everything.
One more final point here. We need to congratulate Mojic because this morning he underwent a bet din and is now formally a converted Jew. Not that he needed to be converted, but just to make it kosher by all standards.
My name is Modric Mayeresera, and I'm a Lemba Jew, and I'm a father of two. I live in Harare, which is the capital city of Zimbabwe.
Here is Zimbabwe, the capital city. Notice Mozambique is near, as well as Madagascar. All these areas have the Cohen gene.
But now I'm going to tell you about my tribe, the Lemba Jews of Zimbabwe. This poetry sometimes tell of our history and culture. There are two types of poetry that we use. They are what we call tribal poetry, which is general poetry of the Lemba as a tribe. And there are some poetry which belong to the different houses of the Lemba tribe. Because the Lemba is a tribe that is subdivided into 12 houses. Each of every house has its own particular kind of poetry that tells of that particular tribe's tribulations. There are specialties like were they miners, were they ironsmith, and so forth. My own clan's poetry, part of it, goes on like this. Batorava Zimbabwe, vavaki vemabwe, vashambadzi vadzo. From this poetry, we know, we of the Toakari clan, that we built the great Zimbabwe. And we are also ironsmith and goldsmith. We made golden bracelets and we traded in these items.
Remember, God's people are seafaring. They have traded through this part of Africa for centuries.
And from similar poetic traditions, we know that, like I said, our fathers were Jews who migrated from Judea to Yemen and from Yemen to Great Zimbabwe. That's our history in brief. Now I'll move on to tell you about our culture, our customs, our traditions. One of the most important cultural practices of the Lemba tribe is circumcision. For one to be called a Lemba man, one definitely has to be circumcised. And without being circumcised, one is treated as just being a non-Lemba. We call the people who are not Lembas Vasenzi. And although one may be Lemba, if he is not circumcised, he's as good as a Musenzi, a non-Lemba. From what we are told by our oral traditions, when Christian missionaries first arrived in Africa, they preached against any tradition that they deemed to be against the doctrines of Christianity.
In those days, the role of the white missionary was to control the black population through religion in order to take over their land.
And unlike other tribes, African tribes, the Lemba resisted converting to Christianity. Hence, they became easy targets for persecution by Christians. So that's why we practice our culture in secret, hidden away from the prying eyes of Christians and their agents.
An angel told Daniel, shut up the book to the end. Close it up to the end. Knowledge is going to be revealed in the end. Well, this is the knowledge that God is revealing, because it's very important to know who's who. Are you understanding what I'm saying? And so now that we are trying to find out some things, we have all kinds of opposition in people, even our own people, because it's so difficult for slaves to know they was special. It was something about them. When all your life you've been told you was a slave, that might have been the most damaging that might have done the most damage to my self-esteem that I ever had at the realization when I went to school that my lineage went back to slavery. And I'm seeing these white boys identifying with Christopher Columbus and identifying with Franklin and all them. And I'm sitting there like, I don't know who I am and I have no idea what else to say. And all they told me was I was a slave, and that's the extent of my knowledge. That hurt my self-esteem. I saw the white boy when he found out who he was and who I was. He looked down on me at that point. And I felt low because I had no history to point to that I wasn't always in this condition.
All right, Williams family, before we learned in the last video that we could trace our lineage also through oral tradition and the name Emmaus. How important are the meanings of Jewish name? Emmaus just so happens to be a Jewish name, but not only a Jewish name, a Hebrew name, an Afro-Asiatic Semitic name from the area of Madagascar. So therefore, we can truly prove that we are from that area through oral traditions. And in fact, many of the people of Madagascar and that same area still practice Judaism to this day and have it in their bloodline. King Solomon ordered his people to search the land and find materials in order for him to build his temple, the temple in Jerusalem with the almug wood.
The theory of Jewish settlers arriving on the island is not that far-fetched. Over the past 2,000 years, the island has received waves of settlers from Asia, Europe, Africa, and more. These could have included Jewish settlers. Sofala in Mozambique was a major trading hub for hundreds of years, and it is believed that traveling Jews crossed the Mozambique Channel to Madagascar. Ashri is on his way to meet with a descendant of the royal family of Madagascar to speak about the island's Jewish history. They are meeting on what the prince believes is ancient Jewish holy ground.
Eh ben oui, premièrement, comment je vous appelle?
Je suis le prince docteur Dinara Barwell, le chef de la maison royale de Madagascar.
Bien.
Nous sommes donc des descendants d'Israël, de Jacob, et nos ancêtres sont arrivés ici à Madagascar depuis l'époque du roi Salomon.
Ah bon?
Et qui sont venus ici à Madagascar pour prendre les pierres précieuses, les bois de rose, bois d'ébène, bois de santal, pour la construction du premier temple de Jérusalem. Et ici, donc, nous gardons les coutumes juives et israélites les plus anciennes dans le monde entier. Vous voyez trois couleurs, le rouge, le noir et le blanc, normalement le blanc. Et ça, c'est la couleur de la tribu de LEVI. Donc nous avons gardé ces couleurs depuis 3000 ans.
Pourquoi vous dites que vous êtes descendant du Juda?
Oui.
Est-ce qu'il y a des petites preuves?
Oui, nous sommes donc dans le village royal et sacré. Il y a plus de 400 tombeaux et c'est le nécropole juif.
Donc ce sont les signes de tombeau royal, les petites maisons au-dessus des tombes.
Oui.
Parce que moi aussi j'ai vu quelque chose comme ça dans l'internet sur les tombeaux des Juifs en Israël, mais miniaturisés. Mais ce sont les mêmes.
Et là, je vais vous montrer donc des inscriptions hébraïques.
Ah, d'accord.
Vous avez ici
Magen David.
Oui, l'étoile de David. Et au-dessus, oui, il y a un icône. Non, il y a un I. Il y a un I.
Israël.
C'est ça.
Ah, oui.
Voilà, c'est ça.
Et pourquoi vous convertissez pas?
Parce que nous sommes des descendants des Juifs biologiques 100%.
Donc vous avez des preuves de tout ça?
Les Juifs en Israël, ils sont juifs par la mère. Donc ils sont des Juifs à 50%. Et nous, nos mères sont des Juifs, nos pères sont des Juifs biologiques, et nous sommes des Juifs biologiques à 100%.
The prince could not identify the age of the tombs and their inscriptions, and most academics agree that the island's first settlers arrived between 350 and 550 BC, centuries after the construction of the first temple of Jerusalem in the 10th century BC. But the prince remains among those on the island wholly convinced of their Jewish heritage. For believers, the proof lies in the similar appearance between the Malagasy people and the Sephardic Jews. The local language has similar sounding words, and they share some Jewish rituals like circumcision. This provides all the evidence they need.
Shalom, shalom.
Joel chapter 3, are you there? Now this is Christ. This is the end time. This is the day of the Lord. This is Armageddon. This is what they tell you that's coming, right? If you ever been in church a while, they tell you this is what's coming. So this is the Armageddon. This is the end of the world. They say this is when Christ comes, right? So we got to get the purpose for why Christ is coming. You got to get that or you're going to miss this whole point. Look at verse 1. For behold, in those days and that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah or Jerusalem. Well, he's saying when I come, I'm bringing again. In other words, I'm bringing back those that was captive, Judah and Jerusalem. I'm going to bring them back. So then, okay, if he's talking about this is the day of the Lord, right? This is the time of judgment when Christ is coming to judge the world, right? His first motive is, his first operation is to bring back the people that was lost, right? Bring back Judah and Jerusalem, right? Well, then if we talking about he's just coming back to say just to gather everybody, there's no distinction. Then why are he talking about Judah and Jerusalem? Because his mission was to deal with his people. Y'all got what I'm saying? Now I will also gather all nations, bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will plead with them there for my people. Also, so the last day Armageddon is about God pleading pleading with the nations for his people that were scattered into all nations. Let it sink in. Now he's coming back for the righteous. He's going to rapture out the righteous. He's coming back for telling y'all, y'all going to give up my people. See, his people ain't got nowhere to go. Where would we go? To Africa? Where you don't know where you're going in that. Trust me, I've been to Africa. You don't know where you're going. Trust me, if they say go to Africa, you would not know where to go. And some of them don't like you because they co-conspirators. How you think they sold you away?
All right, family, let's see if we can find other Hebrew descendants in Papua New Guinea.
The Gogodala people are a small tribe of hunter-gatherers who live in the far western province of Papua New Guinea. It is one of the most unexplored places in one of the most unexplored countries in the world. The story the Gogodala tell of their origins begins with their ancestors' long journey by canoe to a scattering of lush islands set in this tropical lagoon. Thousands of years later, the Gogodala are still here, still mostly hunter-gatherers, still using canoes as their main means of transportation around the lagoon, still cut off from the rest of the world. The Gogodala say they are one of the lost tribes of Israel. They say the Jewish holy book, the Torah, is their story. And after thousands of years in an Eden all to themselves, the Gogodala now say they want to go home, to Israel. FIU religious studies professor Tudor Parfit is an expert on lost Jewish tribes. In March 2013, he took his third trip to Papua New Guinea to visit the Gogodala. To Professor Parfit, the Gogodala's claim to an Israeli ancestry is actually part of a worldwide phenomenon tied to colonialism and the influence of Christian missionaries.
In religious studies, we talk about syncretism, which is the way in which different religious traditions can come together and form a new sort of religious entity. And this is what we have here. The bedrock, I think, of the religious identity of the Gogodala remains in some respects their traditional belief system upon which has been grafted Christianity, which was introduced in the 1950s. Now, on top of that's been grafted a kind of Judaism. So it's interesting to see that they now, many of them wear yarmulkes. They've recently acquired prayer shawls. They've started celebrating quite specifically Jewish holidays like Passover, for instance, and Hanukkah.
The Gogodala say they have always been Jews. In fact, their original ancestors, they say, came from Jerusalem.
And our ancestors believe, they passed down the story that we traveled in that canoes The canoes came from a place called Yebisaba.
We believe that Yebisaba is in Israel, which is Jerusalem at this time, because at that time that place was still known as Yabis, and that's our ancestors and our forefathers told us that that's our homeland, and we will return one day to that place, Yabisaba, in the west.
We are praying that the Lord's word will be fulfilled through us. When it says in the Bible, when Yeshua's coming, before he comes, all his people, his chosen people, will go back to Israel.
Remember, family, in the prophecy of Jeremiah, God says he's coming back for his people. Not only is he coming back, but judgment will be given to those who went against his people.
Will you render me a recompense? And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head? Because ye have taken my silver and my gold and have carried into your, I showed y'all the temple, what they did in Jerusalem. That's what they had done. And carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children, and verse 6, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither you have sold them. Nobody gonna raise us. He said, I'm gonna raise them where you sold them at, and will return your recompense. In other words, what you done upon your own head, and then I'm gonna sell your daughters and your sons into the hands of Judah. Now, why do you think the white scholars didn't tell you who you was? Because the judgment's against them. It's against Edom, them that sold us. So they know in order for you to really get out of this, they gonna have to fulfill the prophecy, which is they gonna be sold. Now you see why they never told you who you are. Because the only way, because there's a recompense, that means what you done gonna have to be done. So all of these scholars, Schofield and Darby, these people who was commentating on the Bible, Matthew Henry, these people knew the scriptures, but they understood that they cannot reveal, because the revelation would be the very people that we got in chains. We're gonna be judged for them. So there's a go, we'll never let them know. In comes secret societies. This is what secret societies are about. I told y'all, the secret of secret societies is who are the people of God. That's what the secret is. They go to their death before they tell the secret. They'll destroy. What you see right now, let me tell you what's happening right now. Because the truth is getting out, they're going to scorch the earth. That means before they get to you, they're going to destroy it all. That's what they're doing now. I don't believe that Paris stuff. That's false. That's all false. All that stuff's false. They doing that stuff because